And we're back. We're going to keep on looking at tasks right now. And so this is where we looked at task data abstraction. We're looking at task abstraction right now, and then we'll look at visual encoding later on. But let's look at somewhat from a high level, low level, mid level view of things, how we can categorize our tasks. So here's our high level, right? How do we analyze our tasks? Do we consume? Do we produce? Are we presenting information? So here's the different kinds of consumption of a visualization. This is for visualizations, but it also works for data analysis. Here is the different things that you can do for production of a visualization or a data analysis. Here's a mid-level version of it, whether I'm if I'm doing a search task, what does a search task consist of? Here are the 4 different types of search tasks you can do for when I am trying to, let's say, discover information about where I am currently living. And then we have these little low-level things, like queries, like identifying the highest priced department, or comparing how the presidential ratings are across the United States at any given time. Notice these are, or summarizing approximately, how many cases of COVID-19 there are in Ottawa, or where the hotspot in Ottawa is for COVID-19. That's more of identified. Summarizing is COVID-19 very bad in Ottawa, for example. This is a low-level task. This is something you could just crunch out a number for, right? You're data mining, or if you're doing information retrieval, this is a beautiful place for information retrieval. Wonderful. That's where it lands. Or searching also would probably land in there as well. The high-level stuff is where things get really noisy and really messy. The high-level stuff is where you normally need the human driving things, or the human is there's not a one-size-fits-all for that particular task. But in all of these cases, for high-level tasks, it's phase-dependent. So when you're first discovering things, you might do a lot of production, you might do you might be doing discovery, and when you're showing your final results to your boss, it might be presentation. It might be enjoyment if I'm really bored one time, rather than it's for my job. So depending on what phase you are in the process of data analysis, right? When I'm initially cleaning my data, how clean is the data? I'm discovering things about that, versus what kind of, when I'm finally done producing my Jupyter notebook, I'm presenting and I'm sending this off to me, like you're sending your project off to me, you're presenting information about your project to me, right? That is a different part of the phase. And it's iterative. If I discover something while I'm doing let's say I derive new data, and then I go back and I do it and I explore the data again. Or I discover things in my data, I then refine it, I present it, the boss says, what about this? I go back and I discover it again. The actual phase where I am in my data analysis process changes. And this, as an iterative process, because the design is iterative, I may be going back to these levels again and again. Okay, and here's my low level again. So we're going to look at the 2 different major types. Consumption, this is for somebody else to use your system, or you, I guess, but really when you talk about consumption, it is you're passing it off to somebody else normally, and they are interpreting your data. The person that makes the visualization is not the person that consumes the visualization. The person that produces the visualization is that person that produced the visualization. I know, crazy. So if I have a visualization and I'm playing with it and I tag it, I am producing a bit of information that is associated with that visualization. Or if I tag or put a comment in code, it is a tag that it's part of the production process of generating code. If I derive the descriptive data based on a database, or I figure out what the difference between the high and low points of my data set, to figure out what the range the range of between the high and low in a series of numbers that I have. That's derived data. I'm still producing data there. I'm not enjoying it. I'm not looking at it and going, "Ooh, that's so cool." This is me making new data. Or maybe I'm recording it for other people, or I'm making these visualizations and recording them just so I have an archive of what I've done. Not necessarily video recording. It is just some like saving new. I do an analysis. I make a Jupyter notebook. I save that Jupyter notebook so that other people can look at my data. Exploration, by the way, or the discovery phase. John Tukey, who is a famous statistician, very famous for bringing people back from sort of this really anal retentive side of statistics. So for a long while, statistics was all about like throw numbers at this, get your answer, and you just crunch numbers. And Tukey was always big on bringing people back from that brink, which he was always looking at it going, when you initially have data, you should not be running statistical tests on it. You should be exploring the data. You should be looking at the data, getting a sense of the data. You don't blindly just go on in and start crunching numbers. You should have a feel for what the data looks like, to see if the data is clean, to see if it's ready to be analyzed, to see if there is an outlier or what kind of research questions you might have with your data. That's an exploration phase. It's part of the discovery phase. This is when you need a lightweight, very, very simple way of looking at your data. We'll be doing that for project 3, I guess, in Tableau. You throw your data in Tableau, you visualize some stuff. You don't worry if the color scheme looks good or anything like that. You're just trying to figure out, do I have outliers? What does the data look like? Is there something weird going on? Is there some part of the data that really stands out and you say, oh, that's something interesting? Exploration. And then we have validation, which is I run a statistical test showing that that this particular chemical causes cancer. Or I look at a particular study and I show that COVID-19 is aerosolized versus based on droplets based off of the data that I have. You better have hard data to back up anything that when you're talking about COVID-19. So you might explore a bunch of what you have as return values from your users or from a study, and then later on you validate it by running statistical tests on your study. And then you visualize that to help people understand what you're trying to get across. And that's part of the presentation. You make a visualization for yourself, maybe with some stats in it, and then you present it for other people to understand what you're doing. Here would be me making derived data, right? I have exports and imports, and then I look at the trade balance between the two. That's derived data. It is part of the process of me exploring and analyzing data. We're going to look briefly at one possible mid-level action. There's a bunch of different things you could look at. One of the more common ones is searching. So you could look at searching in a variety of different ways. I'm going to have another example, but I'm going to go over 2 different examples. So here is the off-the-cuff example. Example 1, you're looking for a house because you're just moving into a new apartment, right? Maybe you're not from the Ottawa area. So what do? I need to find an apartment. And then beyond that, once I found the apartment, there's a bunch of other things I need to do. I moved to Ottawa last year, so this is something we went through, right? I don't know if I know the target I'm looking for, the house that I found. I know the house. I don't know where it is. I throw it into Google Maps. I locate where it is in the city. Great. I know where it is in the city. I drive to the house and look at the open house. Okay, so if I have a known location, known target, maybe what I want is actually instead of just this, maybe I want to have the Google Street View of that particular location. Or I want to get the zip code or the postal code for that particular location. So I have a known target where I'm looking, the house, and I know where it's located, so I know what I'm looking for. I know where it's located, and I want to find out information about that particular house, like the Google Street View. If I know where I'm about to live, let's say I put an offer on the house. Well, I know the target is unknown, and let's say the target is unknown, but the location is known. Maybe I'm looking for, can I find, where are the coffee shops near my house? So I know where I'm looking, around where my house is. The target coffee shops, I don't know where they are. And so I'm looking around that area. I know where I'm looking, but not what I'm looking for. I don't know where the things I'm looking for are located. And then there's location is unknown, target is unknown, I'm just exploring crap, right? What is around me? What am I looking for? Don't know. I'm just looking around. So this is one way of looking at searching, right? That's how you could break down your task. And each of those tasks have a very different interface. They have a very different set of goals, and they have a very different way of approaching the task. So back to, this is Northeastern University. Right here is the Museum of Fine Arts. This is where my old department was right here. This is the actual university right here. It's a, not very much space geographically, but it's a fairly big university. And it keeps on extending as well. So look up, where's Ryder Hall, right? I know what I'm looking for. I don't know, the location is known, target's known, what's the address? Sorry. Where is Ryder Hall is, I don't know the location, but I know the target, Ryder Hall. What buildings are near Ryder Hall? Or where can I find a cheeseburger around Ryder Hall? I know the location around Ryder Hall, but I don't know where the targets are located. And then, what's south of Huntington Avenue? I don't know. I'm just exploring stuff. So somewhere around here, I'm just exploring and looking around. If I just bought a house, I want to find out where the local coffee house is, and I want to find out, like, oh, look, there's a crack den right next to my house. That's good to know. Okay. Or, oh, look, there's this kind of thing. Or maybe the walk around my house is really long. Or, oh, there's no sidewalks. Right? You're exploring. You don't know what you're looking for. That's very different than I'm looking up a particular location. Those unknowns mean you have to have a lot more fluidity in terms of how you look at the space, because you don't know what you're looking for. Here's another thing we could look at for queries. For low level, we might be looking at identifying, like what is the highest point here. It might be, or where am I in the grading scheme for this course? I might be comparing my grades over time, or I might be comparing my grades against somebody else's grades or a series of grades, or I might be comparing how Joe Biden is doing compared to Donald Trump, or I might be summarizing how crazy things are in general, right? Approximately how many people have COVID-19, right? If you see all the different dots, it's a general summary. And we have something called targets, and the targets themselves are the things that we are looking for. So it might be part of any part of the data. So we're looking for trends in the data. We might be looking for outliers or features. That's all data. That's the target that we're looking for. We're looking for features in the data, for example. We might be looking for a particular attribute, like what's a distribution? What are the extreme values in this? How do we have a correlation between things? So, and when we compare multiple different attributes at once, is there a correlation between smoking and cancer? How similar are people that smoke? Let me see here. How similar are these two different demographics that smoke, for example? Or how similar are smokers to marijuana smokers in terms of how they do on SAT scores? I'm just making up random numbers. I'm not implying anything here. Is smoking dependent on being, smoking dependent on having long hair, or something like that? You could make up anything, right? These are just made up examples, right? Or I might be looking at how things are connected. Who am I connected to? Am I the central person on my social network? Is there a central person in my social network? Is there a path between myself and Conan O'Brien? Yes, there is, by the way. Is there a path between myself and Barack Obama? Yes, there is, because there's a path between me and Conan O'Brien. Right there, am I related to anyone that was historically famous? Right? Is there, what kind of paths are we talking about? Is there a shape? If in terms of spatial shape, the data, does it form a particular pattern? These are all kinds of things that you're looking for. These are the kinds of targets you'd be looking for in your data sets. It might be also not visual data sets. I might be looking at those extremes in terms of the minimum and maximum in a range of data as part of my descriptive statistics. It doesn't have to be visually represented, or it doesn't have to be abstractly visually represented. You just give me numbers. So we will look at encoding very, very soon. That's like things like, how do I encode things on a map? Do I do things spatially, align things? Do I use color, different kinds of color? Do I use curvature? That sort of thing. But let's put it all together here. Here is an actual visualization from a fairly long time ago, I think 2008, called the tree juxtaposer. It makes zero sense to anyone that is not in biology. It doesn't look that nice by today's standard either. The tree juxtaposer is if you were just a random person off the street looking at this thing, you'd think that they really screwed up. It's beautiful for that. So what do they have? They have biologists looking at a phylogenetic tree to seeing the combinations or the commonalities between different species in a phylogenetic tree. It could be looking at genetic information as well, but this is phylogenetic tree information. So what are the biologists doing? They are trying to identify commonalities between different branches or different species. They are trying to identify what things they have, these two species have in common, or what species have this particular gene in them, or they're trying to locate a particular species within the phylogenetic tree. You could be doing all sorts of these low-level things. You can also be presenting this to other people for them to figure out what you're trying to get across when it comes to your analysis later on. The target itself is the path between this species here and this species here. How far off am I from chimpanzee in terms of genetics or the phylogenetic tree? How similar is a fruit fly to a dung beetle? Something like that, right? Can I see what those patterns are, where the branching happened? And we have a whole bunch of different ways we can look at the data, but the key is, before they did this, they sat down with biologists and picked their brain. They figured out what the biologists needed, not by asking the biologist, do you want something called the tree juxtaposer? Hey, does this tree juxtaposer look good? No. They figured out what the task was and then built a visualization for the task. Even if you're just doing data analysis, you figure out what the task is and you build tools to help people do the task. That's your job. So if you want, you can look at the tree juxtaposer video to see there's so much detail. There's so many interesting little quirky things about this visualization. It's wonderful. And it's applicable in other domains as a result, because they've abstracted away the task from the biology domain. It works in a whole bunch of other areas. And there's another paper as well for this. Same sort of thing. Sit down with the user and find out. I did the same thing when I was looking at casual visualizations. I sat down with average everyday people and saw where they ran into visualizations in their daily lives, how long they looked at them, why they looked at them, and talked to them. That's how I got my model for how people think or use visualizations in casual contexts. You have to understand the user. And if we're looking at low-level taxonomies, there's a ton of these, by the way, not just this one type, but John Stasko did a good paper in 2005 for this, so we might as well go through some of the things that he pointed out in terms of analysis. So from a low-level standpoint, things that you can have the computer do for you and point out for you. This is not exploration. This is not the person has to get involved in how to do this. You want this to be a tool to help the person figure out higher-level things. Things like retrieving a particular value. How long has it gone with the wind, for example? Can I filter things out, like what comedies have won awards? Can I compute derived value? For example, how many awards has MGM Studio won? So for MGM, each of the movies, how many awards have they won, and then figure out and then summarize those awards. That wouldn't be raw in the data. You would have to derive it. Find the extreme. So what's the longest movie, or what director has won the most film awards? Can I rank the movies according to the number of awards that they have, or their Rotten Tomatoes rating? What is the range? What's the longest and shortest film in history? Can I figure out what the distribution is? So age distribution of actors, for example, age distribution of directors, how normally distributed are they? That distribution tells you some information. It's different than the minimum and maximum. What's the most abnormal thing? So Life is Beautiful is an abnormal film in terms of winning the Academy Award because it's a foreign film, and I'm not sure how many other foreign films. I think Parasite won as a foreign film, but I think those are the only two. It was a really exceptional case until recently. Is there a relationship between the number of awards and total number of movies made by a particular actor? Like, is there someone that really stands out as a weird anomaly? Or is there clusters? Like, do movies about World War II win more Academy Awards than other movies? I think that's true, actually. And or is there a correlation between the length of the movie and how many Academy Awards it wins? Or has the length of movies decreased over time? These are all low-level tasks that your system should be able to pop up if you need it. But the user should not be figuring this out themselves. Higher-level things, they use these low-level bits of information to make higher-level decisions. So, I'm going to stop there, and we're going to get back to what the actual task is next.